world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Wednesday, the 29th of July, year of our Lord 2026. Well, we have Anthony Fauci testifying today. We're going to take a quick look back and review and take a look at what is happening right now. And we've got a lot of conservatives, a lot of alternative media who are still selling the lie. They're selling the lie that is going to entrap us in the not too distant future. The lies about lab leaks, the lies about a virus. Folks, the jab was planned. The lockdown was planned and practiced for decades. It's a very dangerous situation we're looking at, especially when we look at the rollout of the surveillance eyes and the data center brains, the surveillance centers. And we're going to listen to what one of those sounds like. And we're going to take a look at how it's being used in China as well. Yeah, this is not an AI race between the U.S. and China. This is an AI race between our government versus you and your liberty and freedom and dignity. That is what they're trying to steal from you. We'll be right back. Let's begin, however, with where this all really needs to start, and that is with the family and with our relationship with Christ. That is what is happening in this country. How can you look at a situation, when we look at the funeral of Lindsey Graham, we'll take a quick look at that as well. The people that are assembled there, how can we not think that we are under God's judgment when we're led by people like that? Well, this is an article actually from Futurism, which is kind of interesting because you have the New York Times, secular, of course, publication, and Futurism, both of them even leaning left significantly. And so you had the New York Times say, well, how do journalists at the New York Times talk to the children about the news, right? We talked about that earlier this week. Now you've got, this is Futurism saying this is a really sad, crushingly sad AI app that tells bedtime stories to your children for you because you're too tired to do it. Yeah, you can't talk to your kids about what's happening in the world. You can't talk to them about the real context to fit it in, which is the fact that it is God's world and you need God's word to do that. But you also can't tell them a bedtime story. You need to have AI do that for you automatically. Are you tired after a long day, but you want to give your kids a special bedtime story? Well, even Futurism sees this as a failure. But the reality is that we just haven't gotten accustomed to it yet. We're accustomed to the fact that we send our kids off to a government institution to babysit and to teach them values, folks. They're not teaching them how to read and write. They don't want them to be independent, critical thinkers. They're teaching them values that you should be teaching your kids and your grandkids. So here's the pitch on the website. Tired after a long day, but you want to give your kids a special bedtime story? Story Kit uses AI to help you create personalized bedtime stories in seconds. No more guilt about screen time, just beautiful, unique stories made with love. You know, Karen would do that sometimes to the kids, make up a story. Sometimes we would sometimes we'd read to them from the Bible and explain to them these are not just stories, right? This is not just not to be confused with some made-up bedtime story. But she would make up bedtime stories sometimes, and she had a running gag with him about a dog named Climber and his adventures. And it was kind of an interactive thing. I remember one time, we still laugh about it. Lance is sitting there and he goes, use the word suddenly. I like it when you use suddenly. It really moves the narrative along, right? Let's be real. This app is amazingly sad, says Futurism. Outsourcing the emotional, creative labor of bedtime stories to machines is a wildly bleak proposition. Well, I would say that outsourcing the time that you have with your children to a government institution is also wildly bleak. And it is, I think, at the root of how our society has fallen. no doubt in my mind about this. And along those lines, the guy who was known as Dr. Death, Gunter von Hagens, dies at 81. This is the bodies exhibits, the body worlds and things like that, where he would take dead bodies and he would plasticize them so you could see the circulatory systems, skeletal systems, and on like that. And I remember I got into a big fight on a website that was for homeschooling back in the early 90s with a lot of homeschoolers who were really pushing this. And I said, do you realize where these bodies are coming from? There are already a lot of talk about the fact they were getting these bodies from China. And there were people who had said that they had come in with bullet wounds or other things like that. And I said, you may be looking at the victims, when you support this, you may be looking at the victims of a repressive totalitarian government. And it might be fellow Christians that you're looking at, their bodies that have been killed. Well, this guy now has gone on, and of course, he asked that his body be plasticized as well. And more than 58 million people worldwide have viewed his expositions. Religious groups and others have frequently objected to the display of human remains. Well, I think that's one part of it, but I think even more important to me is how did he get those human remains? It was Gunter von Hagens' own wish to make his body one of these, and so now he has gotten that wish at least. LifeSite News says murder is still murder regardless of how small the victim is, and I agree with that. And it is still murder no matter the age. You can be 8 months, 8 years, 80 years, which is what is happening in Gaza. And yet, when we look at the funeral of Lindsey Graham, we have people from Christian family groups. We have people from Christian pro-life groups. We have Franklin Graham, all these people showing up. It's like, what is going on with this? Is that really what the Christian movement is about? Why do we look to people like Franklin Graham and others when they do this type of thing? So we have these leaders who are supposedly pro-life, pro-family, pro-Christ, and they are honoring the genocide of people. Now, they will all come out and say, oh, no, don't kill a baby with an abortion. And I absolutely agree. I think that's horrific. I think it's horrific for a surgeon to rip a child apart limb by limb, which is what they do in some of these abortions. I think it's horrific no matter how they're killed. But I think it's also horrific when you drop bombs that tear them limb from limb and crush them. I think all of that is horrific. And of course, we have also had testimony of what the IDF is doing in Israel, where they find mass graves, and you've got even children tied up with their hands behind their backs as they put them in a mass grave alive and bury them alive under dirt. The testimony of a guy who was a physician working there, Jewish himself. And he is haunted by that as any normal person would be. They don't consider the baby's rights, the father's rights, or the fact that murder is still murder, regardless of how small the victim is or regardless of what their age is. And that is a common characteristic with so many people in this political situation. Christian support for Trump is making 48% of Gen Z less likely to attend church survey, said a survey. Do you think that people can smell the rank hypocrisy with Franklin Graham, with these other people, when they cheer Gaza and they cheer the people who started these wars, like Lindsey Graham, and they speak and eulogize him at his funeral? I mean, this is like showing up at the funeral of Kermit Gosnell and talking about what a wonderful person he was. And that's what they did with Lindsey Graham. Give me a break. The hypocrisy is just beyond measure here. Why can't they see the same thing about Zionism and other things like that? This is why I can't remain silent about it. Because I understand that not only is it a heinous crime against other Christians, that is being applauded by Christians, and it's our fellow man that is out there. And it's not just that we have Christians and we only have to be concerned about Christians. That's not our theology. That's the theology of rabbinical Judaism, that it only matters if it's their people who get killed. but it matters whoever is being killed. And we have to stand against this. Everybody sees how hollow our religion is when we cheer that type of behavior. It disgusts me and it disgusts people, and so it is turning them off. Unfortunately, many times people will look at a pastor who has moral failures, or look at a church that has systematic institutional moral failures or something like that, and they'll walk away. I don't want to have anything to do with God. Well, that doesn't have anything to do with God either. You need to understand that the people, even if they're leaders of a church or an institution or whatever, people are fallen just like you and I are fallen. They can engage in rank hypocrisy and rank sin. They can engage in murder. They can commit all kinds of heinous crimes in terms of sexual assault against children. We see that rampant. It's not just a Catholic thing. It's a Christian thing across the board. It happens in all these different institutions. And of course, it happens in government schools as well. We just have to understand that has nothing to do with God or Christ. They condemn that. And that is the key thing. But what is happening here with this is similar situation to people. You have these megachurch pastors, and all of a sudden you find out that he's got this secret life, this secret sex life, or maybe he's abusing children or doing something like that. And all of a sudden, this big church of thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands of people, just kind of dissolves and goes away because they were focused on that guy. They weren't focused on the Lord Jesus Christ. And so the same thing is happening with this. And it is even worse when we look at people from the outside who we certainly don't think that they're going to be looking at Christ. They're going to be looking at Christians. It's like what Mahatma Gandhi said. I like your Christ, but I don't like you Christians. Is what he had to say. And so we just need to understand that that does not define Christ, but it does define Christ to the world. We are the visible representation to the world if we are Christians and they are not. And so this article from LifeSite News says, well, we look at Trump and his ascent to power. A lot of people were put off by his salacious history. Not even getting into the Jeffrey Epstein stuff at the time in 2016. But just the fact of, what he did with his wives and how he cheated on his wives, that type of thing. But and also the fact that he retains his admiration for homosexuality and marriage and things. And we've seen that. Trump sold rainbow merchandise in 2020. It's like, when I have Christians who are cheering Trump, it's like, do you realize who this guy is? And as I said before, if he's going to not just divorce his wife, I understand, in this society, it's very difficult. Divorce has become very common, and people don't try to work this out. And it only takes one person to walk away. And so I don't blame anybody who has a divorce. However, that's not what Donald Trump did. He always initiated, and it wasn't enough for him just to divorce his wife. He had to essentially pursue them in public, denigrating them constantly. It's just beyond belief what he was like. But nevertheless, they looked at this and they said, well, we got Roe v. Wade overturned with some Supreme Court judges. Eventually you keep putting them in there. Eventually you get the right combination. You really can't control what that's going to be like. As I said many times, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, said Forrest Gump. Well, this time they did get something, and that didn't really have anything to do with Trump. Not really. I mean, they could have, the people, as they always put them in, they would always ask them the question, well, what about Roe v. Wade? And they would always give the wrong answer. They'd always say Roe v. Wade is the law of the land. No Supreme Court decision is the law of the land. None. Zero. Zip. Nada. If you say that, you are not qualified to be a Supreme Court justice, quite frankly. And there isn't a Supreme Court justice, even the ones who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade, that didn't genuflex to that lie in order to get their position. And then they said, we're very happy because, he got rid of the Planned Parenthood funding. But even LifeSite News points out, he continued to work against taxpayer funding of abortion. However, though Planned Parenthood's funding just recently resumed because the White House and Mike Johnson couldn't be bothered to stop it. And they'd already boasted about how they had stopped the grants in July of last year, and then by December, they just quietly allowed them to come back in. Trump has repeatedly claimed credit for a nationwide religious revival, says LifeSite News. That's satanic right there. Isn't it? Americans call religion an important part of their daily life. The percentage who do that has dropped 17 points. And that has happened after Trump closed the churches. Let's talk about how he's created a religious revival. He has done for churches what his lockdowns, the same thing he did for commercial real estate with his lockdowns. Federal authorities are investigating, however, a video that appears to show a man kicking a protected sea lion in California. Yeah, save the baby whales and baby seals or whatever, but don't save the babies. You know, this is the same federal government that is bombing schools in Iran with a double tap strike. Well, you got Lindsey Graham crying with tears of joy about how it's finally there. I've worked decades for this to happen. That same federal government is now going to investigate, make a federal issue out of it, right? Somebody kicking a sea lion. I'm not saying we ought to go out and kick sea lions, but I'm also saying this shouldn't be made a federal case out of. We used to have a saying, didn't we? Well, it's a free country. You can do what you want. No, we don't say that anymore because nobody believes that anymore. We used to say, don't make a federal case out of that. Well, everything is made a federal case out of. Somebody kicks a seal, it becomes a federal case. Assault is assault, no matter the species. I would say murder is murder of civilians, no matter the country. Murder is murder, no matter the age of the human being. But they only care about animals, actually. This is PETA talking. The abuser laughed while harassing and kicking a sea lion who was desperately trying to escape. Now do that same thing with Lindsey Graham, laughing with tears of joy as they dropped massive amounts of bombs on Iran, killing children and the rest of this. What an insane country and world this is. It's just disgusting to see it. James Tallarico, meanwhile, says Islamic mystics have shaped his faith as much as Christians. I don't think his faith has been shaped by Christians, actually. This is a story, however, put out by the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's institution. And, of course, they're playing partisan politics, and it's a big issue in Texas about the massive encroachment by Muslims trying to get enough critical mass to set up Sharia law in various areas. And so they're pushing for that. What Ben Shapiro will not give you is an expose about the Jewish mystics, those who follow Kabbalah, and the different groups that are quietly taking over our country from the top down, not from the bottom up. I don't want to see either one of these things happening. But I think pretty much people understand if the people are not going to vote for Tallarico because they think he's a Christian. It's pretty transparent what he is. But when you look at the takeover, as I've said with Donald Trump, I'd much rather have a situation of somebody coming at me wearing a uniform, declaring what they believe, rather than somebody lying to me so they can get behind me and stab me. You know, it's the old fifth column thing. Yeah, we got, there's 4 columns of troops advancing toward the city. And the guy says, well, the best thing is we've got a 5th column that's inside the city. You know, the old Trojan horse thing. That was from the Spanish Civil War. And that really is what the Republicans and the Zionists represent, I believe, a 5th column. But this is what Tallarico had to say. He said, I know personally that I've learned as much about my faith from Solomon's tradition. He was on a program with a guy who was a Muslim. From the Islamic mystics, from poets like Rumi, as much as I have from Christian authors and Christian writers. This kind of interfaith dialogue, it doesn't water down your tradition. In fact, it strengthens it. It brings it out with new flavors and new colors. Well, the reality is that he claims in some speeches that he's a biblical Christian. If you're a biblical Christian, you don't focus on the traditions and the doctrines of men or philosophies. You believe that the Bible is God's word to you, and you take that as the single source. And Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You're not going to find a truth somewhere else that is important. The truth is Christ. and no one comes to the Father except through him. That's pretty exclusive. And he is anti-Christian in his embrace of this. But I think people can see that for the most part.
I don't know. I think a lot of people nowadays just see being Christian as being vaguely nice.
Yeah.
You just show up and you're the positive Polly. You're like, oh boy, I know, things are good. Everything's good. Jesus loves you, man. And then you never elaborate on that. You don't give them any more details. You just say, Jesus is love, and you walk away.
There's a lot of churches like that. There's a lot of churches, a lot of denominations that, the key thing for them is do not offend anybody. Well, that was not the way Christ operated at all. He said to the scribes and Pharisees, you brood of vipers. I called them the synagogue of Satan. The creep of Islamic theology into Texas, says the Daily Wire, has been a hot issue over the last few years, and that's what Ben Shapiro is trying to focus on here. He didn't write this article, but it's his Daily Wire. That is a real problem. But it's also a real problem when you have Christians that are taken over by Judaizers, because they ignore the most important foundation, and that is Christ. They're undermining Christ. They're making their religion about a group of people. They're making it about a political entity. That's the reality. Tallarico describes himself as a, quote, Christian who hates Christianity. He said he believes that God is non-binary, that Jesus was a radical feminist. During recent commencement speech, he appeared indifferent to whether people believed in God or attended church. And he's actually leading Ken Paxton, because Ken Paxton is Trump-like in terms of his personal life and his corruption, what he did to his wife and other people. He's had multiple scandals of financial nature. He's had multiple scandals of a relationship nature. You can't beat somebody like Tallarico, I think, if you've got somebody with no moral character. They're trying to make this a religious issue, but they don't have a dog in that fight. There isn't a moral person that's on the ballot there, unless you've got some independent third-party candidates that are there. So he says, find a spiritual practice that works for you, whether it's meditation or fasting or gardening or bird watching, whether it's a church or a temple or a book club. He said, just find something you can do. Well, the reality is that you may find some good in those things, but you're not going to find the ultimate good. You're not going to find peace. You're not going to find eternal life. And these are the types of things that God provides, these types of things for us. It is a blessing to have these types of things. But don't go away from the giver of the gifts. Jesus said, come to me and I will give you rest. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick note and we will be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
And I just want to remind you that we're getting close to the end of the month, and we are way down on the gas gauge here. I don't know. I know it's a difficult time. I know inflation has gone up. People are very uncertain about what is happening. But it is, if you're able to find any value in the program, we would ask that you go to davidknight.news, and we have places there where you can support the program. Other than a handful of people who are always faithful producers and provide a tremendous lion's share of the support. For the most part, most of the listeners do not support the program, and they just listen to it. But if you find any value in it, we'd ask that you please support the program to keep it going. Let's talk a little bit about the flock cameras in the surveillance state. Thomas Massey this is the third thing that has come out of the Republicans in terms of pushing back against the flock surveillance stuff. Problem is, Mike Johnson, as usual, is on the wrong side of these issues. He doesn't care about the Constitution. He doesn't care about your liberty. He doesn't care about your dignity, your freedom and dignity. They want to control you like B.F. Skinner, who wrote the book Beyond Freedom and Dignity. And that's where we will be if this stuff goes through. So he has a bill that he says is going to be coming out. We haven't seen it yet. He hasn't released it yet. And so the devil will be in the details. But I like the approach that he's taken, because the approach that he's taken is to go after the funding and to say, if you are a police department or a city that's going to run these flock cameras, we're going to take federal money away from you. That's the way that it always works. That's what Trump did with the lockdown. And of course, Democrats and Republicans do this. They always I said it is Trump's lockdown. People say, he's not doing it. It's the bad Democrat governors. The bad Democrat governors, they might do it on their own, but they're more than happy to do it. Even bad Republican governors will do it. If you give them a massive amount of money, they would get more money. People like Brad Little in Idaho got more money as a governor for his own discretionary spending than the entire state budget. He got that from Trump. And boy, did he use that to advance that agenda. Just like we saw with boys and the women's, the girls' dressing rooms and showers, Trump would take away, the Republicans would take away the funding if you did that. The Democrats would take away the funding if you did not do that. They always use that as a weapon. That's the right approach, I think. That is the key approach. Thomas Massie understands that. A bill to withhold federal money from municipalities and police departments. Now, Tim Burchett has also come up with an approach to that. His approach is to forbid the federal government from accessing this data, and that is the right thing to do. But there's a lot of ways that they can get around that. I think the money is the key issue. If you want to force something from the federal government, we have the 10th Amendment, and you can't just say you can't do this or that, or you must do this or that. They use money and federal grants as the way to do that. So Thomas Massie's bill is a lot more practical. Now, Tim Burchett introduced on July 21st the Protection Against Mass Surveillance Act. It would bar federal agencies from purchasing, funding, or accessing this equipment, and any data a federal agency obtained would have to be deleted within 30 days and would be inadmissible in court. His pitch was, we got to ban these daggum things. Which I agree with that. But don't let them get the data in the first place. See, in his bill, they can get the data, but they can't admit it in court. We don't want to have a system of surveillance. And again, the way that the supporters of this argue for it, they say it's just a single camera. We can take your picture in public. That is not the issue. That's not seeing the forest for the single tree or the camera that's on a pole like a tree. It is a forest of these cameras. And with that forest of cameras, they can create an entire dossier on your life. They can anticipate everything that you're going to do. And when you look at the Fourth Amendment and what it was designed to protect against in the day of the founders of the country, the people who wrote the Constitution, what they were concerned about was a government that would come into their home and start rumbling through their papers and things like this. This is way beyond that. Not even close to that. You can create a dossier on somebody's complete life. Looking at some papers that somebody might have in their desk doesn't give you the kind of picture that this surveillance stuff does. That is the key. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the brains of the operation, the AI, and the fact that Trump is doing the opposite of Thomas Massie. He is financially incentivizing people to build these data centers, the local governments and city councils and things like that. We're going to take a look at that, and we're going to listen to what one of these things sound like. You won't believe that. We'll get to that when we come back. We'll be right back.
using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
And welcome back. And I want to thank DG8 and Audi Modern Retro Radio. Thank you so much for responding to our plea for help here financially. Thank you so much for the tips on Rumble. DG8 said, David, I'm not wealthy, but I hope this helps. Yes, everything does. And if everyone that listens to the program gave just a little bit, that would make the budget. He says, God bless you and your family. Thank you so much. God bless you, DG8. I appreciate that. And Audi, thank you so much. That is very generous. He said, just plugging my Rumble channel. He said, everything is a lie, damn it, is his Rumble channel. And his web radio station is modernretroradio.com. He said, love the work you guys do. I love the work that Audi does as well.
Also, everything is a lie, damn it, is one word.
That's right. That's right.
So you can check that out on Rumble.
And he spells damn it, D-A-M-M-I-T, which is the kind of the way they have around here. There's, of course, we have the Army Corps of Engineers came in and built a system of dams and things like that. And there's one area over by the dam, and they have the dam store and all the rest of the stuff that's out there. Well, they spell it D-A-M.
Reminds me of that old joke. You know, a fish swims into a concrete wall. He says, damn.
That's right. Well, we were just talking about the different efforts coming from a Republican here and a Republican there. You had Thomas Massey's coming up with something to block the funding for city and police who were doing this. And Tim Burchett wants to limit the way the government can access and use this data. You have Scott Perry, who's tried to attach an amendment restricting the readers in committee, but it failed because we're talking about a political party that is ruling. Your representatives don't matter, folks, that much. It is the political parties that wield the power, and they can keep bills from even being debated or even voted on. In April, Massey teamed up with Lauren Boebert on the Surveillance Accountability Act, which would require a probable cause warrant, as Constitution does require. It would ban warrantless facial recognition in public spaces. It would block the government from buying its way around the Fourth Amendment via third-party database brokers. And it would make individual federal employees personally suable for violations. Boebert said, the government is building a digital footprint of your entire life without a warrant, without probable cause. And that is the reality of this. Like I said before, this is far worse than just going in and get somebody's papers, which was an outrage. And they wrote the Fourth Amendment in response to this. This is knowing everything about everybody. And this has been their goal for over 50 years. You go back and look at Zbigniew Brzezinski when he said, we're between two ages. In the coming technocratic age, we will know what you're going to do before you do it, because we're going to grab the metadata that is out there. So that's the reality. Gard Goldsmith, good to see you, Gard. Liberty Conspiracy, it says program. He said, Fauci took the fifth all morning, which is complicating for him because he was pardoned, granting him immunity. So now he can be cited for obstructing an investigation. Well, you know, it's interesting, but when you look at these investigations, this is Rand Paul was doing basically what Trey Gowdy did with Benghazi. It's a show trial. It's a show hearing. And I think that when you look at what is going on with Fauci, you need to have a scapegoat, don't you? You know, this is one of the things we talked last week with an author, and he was referring to Rene Girard. We talked a little bit about the philosophy of Rene Girard. And of course, part of that is having a scapegoat. That was a very important part of Rene Girard's philosophy, the fact that society requires a scapegoat because we have these failures and we got to put it on somebody. Well, he's a safe guy to put it on. He is the darling of the media everywhere. And somebody needs to ask, I keep asking this question, how in the world did he collect a salary from the federal government that is twice what is legal? They capped the salary of everyone in the bureaucracy at the salary level of the vice president, which is like a little over $200,000. The president has a salary of $400,000. Fauci's boss's boss, their salaries were capped at $200,000 plus. Fauci was making more than the president. More than the president. He made like $430,000. How is that allowed? I mean, that's just one of many questions that shows you how he is the darling of this system, of the shadow government, the deep state, whatever you want to call it. I think it's come out of the shadows, quite frankly. And I think he is one of the key personnel in this. They're not going to come after him at all. That's one of the reasons why Biden gave him the immunity. And so all of this stuff is a show trial hearing, and I think they're showing you the wrong information. This is not about Fauci knowing that they created something at a bioweapons lab and then somebody released it accidentally or deliberately. No, that is not it. Forget all these lies about a furin cleavage site and all the rest of this stuff. That is absolute nonsense. They haven't isolated these viruses. And virology is just a fraud. As a matter of fact, you could see that Fauci doesn't believe in virology. Why should I believe in virology, right? The basic theory of virology and vaccines is that you get these vaccines in order to train your immune system to be able to fight the real disease when it's presented. Well, Fauci shot all that down. No, that doesn't work. Even if you've had the so-called pandemic disease and you've recovered, that's not sufficient. You still got to get the shot, just like Trump said. Freetard said Christians used to be 30% of Palestine. Now it's down to 1%. That's right. Yeah, we got to understand, a lot of Christians are like, oh, I don't care. It's Muslims or whatever. And yet it's not even that. And even if it were Muslims, they don't deserve to be treated that way. We are all of one blood. That is what, that is the value of Christian society. I just saw that Neil Gorsuch said, well, we never were and we aren't and shouldn't be a Christian nation. Well, it's unfortunate that a Supreme Court justice, who I typically agree with most of his decisions, but he doesn't understand that when we talk about America being a Christian nation, that doesn't mean that you go out and you have to get baptized in order to become a government official, or you have to recite and pledge that you believe the Westminster Confession or something like that. Doesn't mean that at all. What it means is that we were a society that was based on Christian values. Just look at the Declaration of Independence, as I pointed out. The fact that we were all humans created in the image of God. That is a Christian philosophy. That is a Christian philosophy that does not have castes, that does not have races. It doesn't have a master race or chosen people. It is not based on ethnicity. God is no respecter of persons. These are the foundations of Christianity. And this is what Christians have gotten away from, I should say, with their slavish devotion to Zionism and dispensationalism. They make the Bible and God's work about an ethnic group. And so we don't have caste systems. We don't have master races. To the Jew first, but also to the Greek, right? Jew and Gentile. There is no Jew and Gentile. There's no male or female distinctions with God. It's those who trust and believe in him. That is available to everyone. And so we're getting away from that, and that is the key issue here. Audi Modern Retro Radio says the reason that I have a lot of less friends these days is because I prefer to have honest conversations with people. That's right. That'll clear it out real quickly, especially if you talk about things that are important, politics and religion. Thank you very much. Owen61, thank you. I appreciate that on Rumble again. Another tip.
I'm right there with you, Audi. I've gone to some Halloween parties with my wife for her office, with her coworkers and friends of their coworkers.
And they're back in Austin. So.
Yeah, so it can be extremely painful just sitting there listening to the things people talk about and what they say. There was one guy I overheard talking to some woman. I don't know who this guy was or who this woman was, but he said, yeah, I know both parties lie, but I think when the Democrats lie, they're doing it for good reasons. And I about had an aneurysm. I nearly exploded on the spot. I had to go outside.
You'll hear the same thing from Republicans who'll say that. Donald Trump may be an Epstein best friend, but hey, he's got our best interest at heart, right? Yeah. Well, anyway, June of this year, security researcher Ben Jordan found dozens of flight cameras streaming publicly documented AI features that zoom in on and follow people, not cars. Plotting the stored data amounts to putting a months-long GPS tracker on a car. Think of it that way, right? Do you have to have a search warrant to put a GPS tracker on a car? Well, the courts have said yes. But that's exactly what this does. They just don't physically put the device on there. Those points that they collect can be plotted on a map and reconstruct movements. And when they reconstruct your movements from that metadata, they can determine what you think in terms of who your friends are, what you do. They can infer your political and your religious issues. They have bragged and talked about that capability for the longest time. Geospatial intelligence has always been about that. So haven't seen the Massey bill, as Zero Hedge points out. We're going to want to see what it entails. Is it going to punish the cities for any flock deployment, or only if they do warrantless dragnet use? And whether or not House leadership will even give it floor time. So it'll be a few weeks before we're able to see that. Meanwhile, you got people who are starting to take things into their own hands, and many people are getting caught with this because they have these surveillance cameras everywhere. Handy pointed out, he said, in an area where he lives, and that's in Atlanta, where Flock is headquartered. He said they've put up cameras to surveil the cameras so they can get a read on the people who are doing these types of things. Well, here's an individual who's come up with a novel approach. Jason Bassler put this up on X. A guy on Reddit just engineered a 3D printed tool that blocks Flock cameras without touching them. It's a 3D printed attachment that snaps onto a broom or an extension pole. It uses a rubber band to stretch a grocery bag over the lens. There's no contact and there's no vandalism. But understand, this is so vital to the police surveillance state. We just saw an elderly guy who pulled up a chair, sits down in the chair, and he's got his own pole. And he put up a sign that said something like no flock or stop flock or something like a protest sign. And he put it in front of the camera so the camera couldn't see. He didn't touch it at all. He didn't put anything on it. Nevertheless, the police showed up and arrested him. So that is where we are now. Now, this is where we are headed when you look at what is on the way. This is, if you want to see where the West is going to be in a few years, take a look at this. This is China. It's now enforcing nighttime swimming bans using drones. There's a drone with a light, and it's screeching about that. There's people showing up to arrest this person who's out there swimming at night. Now, it was interesting to see the comments on that. There were comments like, well, this is for your own safety. I've swum in the ocean at night. Don't have to have a permit to do that. And I somehow survived. I don't know how I managed to survive, but they said, another person said, well, you can always get a permit. Yeah, I can always create a society, a dystopian society where everything is by permission alone. Do you really want to live that way? Well, there's a lot of people in America who are perfectly fine with that, as a matter of fact. And we're not just talking about Flock. We're also talking about Axon, the people who make tasers, the people who make body cameras, the people who put tasers on drones. They want to put their cameras on all the street lights. And there's about 60 million of them that are on their way soon.
You think that Flock is the worst thing that you have to worry about this year? Well, just pull your pants up and get ready, because Axon and Ubiquia are already rolling out Flock's replacement. Let's talk about it, and I have a video.
Ubiquia.
Guys, we have to take back our damn privacy. I mean, at this point, this is out of control, and what they say it does is help police surveillance for our safety and protection.
Yeah, we've heard all that stuff before, but here's a good example of that, right? I love this meme. This is your standard 1950s perky woman who is drinking a cup of something, and it says, remember when they destroyed your life if you didn't get the vax? But then they let in 17 million unvaxxed illegals in the country? Yeah, it was never about your health. And you've got to understand that that is where this is headed for the next time they do this. On Free Thought Project, there's an article from Common Dreams. The AI race with China is a lie, told by big tech to justify data center invasion. Yeah, the truth is, as they say, we don't need hyperscale data centers in order to, quote unquote, beat China. These hyperscale data centers are surveillance centers. They're designed to beat us down. They're designed, as everything else that big tech does, to confiscate all wealth for themselves. And that is one of the most obvious things that's happening with this. So, in terms of making it a race for technology. It's like the silly moon race that we did with Russia. What was the point of that? Well, the Trump military installations that is he going to call them freedom centers? They're actually surveillance centers, but I guess they'll go from data center to military installation, and he can call them a freedom center.
Just breaking in real fast. Apparently, one of Hannah's sons has acute bronchitis, and he's in the hospital. So just be praying.
Wow. Okay, that's my daughter.
Yeah.
So I would really appreciate your prayers for that.
Yes. It's her youngest son. So please be praying that
he's not even a year old.
No.
Wow.
So be praying for him.
Yes, please. Yeah, I didn't know. Just found that out.
It just came in. Yeah, just found out.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, we certainly would appreciate your prayers and your support in that regard. We know that God listens to prayers, and we know that He has His own understanding. He works things out for our own good, whatever happens. But He has invited us to pray, and He has invited us to pray together so we can all see God working in our lives. And so we'd really appreciate your prayers for our grandson who is in the hospital now. Well, this war, folks, is against us. And they are racing, and the race is to get this in place by 2030. That is the reality of what they're doing. So as this article correctly points out, a race doesn't have two different finish lines. This is a good example. What China wants to do with this is to use artificial intelligence in order to control robots, for example, whereas in the U.S. it's predominantly focused on large language models. So it's ChatGPT versus robots that are out there. And as I point out, neither one of these things are really good outcomes for us. It's not like we want to do the China approach instead of the U.S. approach, but they're not even competing in the same area with this stuff. And so the reality is that I saw somebody summarize what AI is really about, especially here in the United States. It's about giving the people who are wealthy unlimited access to talent, giving wealth unlimited access to talent, but making sure that talent has no access to wealth. Do you understand that? Just take a look at what they do with music, for example. They have essentially destroyed the idea that you're going to go out there and buy a record or an album and come in and listen to it with your friends, which is what we used to do when we were in high school. You didn't have that much money as a high school kid, so you would share in that way. It'd be a communal type of thing. Now everybody just listens for free. And this generation doesn't even think that they should pay for music. They just, everything is free. And so it has given YouTube and Google access to talent. They use that talent to make themselves money, but they don't kick it back in any meaningful way. So big tech is selling us a dystopian future, one that is going to be making sure that we own nothing and they own everything. But we don't even have to get any of the surveillance devices that they sell, like the phones. The guy is going to do it with these networks that are out there. So we need to understand exactly how this is going to work in our life. Here's a good example, right? If you don't pay your car payment, right, they will confiscate your car. A lot of times they do it pretty quickly. Now, this is a guy who had his car confiscated. He missed one payment. But note the way that they did it. They didn't send out a repo guy to go physically pull it while it's parked. What they did, this is Ford, and they remotely shut off his car.
On my Ford Bronco, Ford shut down my car because the payment is late. Dang, that's rough. That's like a scam, right? So my brand new Bronco with 3,000 miles on it is broke down in the middle of, I don't think Ford realizes.
So that's the key thing. What he's showing you there is that's the middle of the expressway that's there. So he's out in the middle driving. I mean, he could be on the interstate anywhere. And they just turn the car off. This is a very different approach because this is the technological approach to doing this rather than having a repo man who's going to go out there and repossess a car. I mean, it's beyond the issue of whether the repossession is a bit aggressive and early. It's how they're doing it. And so the FBI is also wants to use AI to create a political watch list. Documents show the FBI is seeking AI tools to flag Americans before they act, as the terror watch list's focus moves towards domestic dissent. They have these watch lists, and we're not allowed to know if we're on them, right? They have the star chamber process where they can accuse you. You're not allowed to know the charges against you. You're not allowed to defend yourself against your accuser, which in many cases is the government. And they will go in. This is the way this all began. I've talked about this endlessly. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I've got a lot of stuff I want to cover before Gerald joins us today. But this goes back to geospatial intelligence in the late 1990s. And at that time, they were talking about a different kind of AI, anticipatory intelligence. And that is exactly what this is about. And it's about focusing on your politics and your religion. And so, just as I said before, you have Thomas Massey, who is looking at it, said it's about the money. So let's deny the money to the police departments and the municipalities that are doing this type of thing. Whereas Donald Trump is trying to bribe them to do that. He's out there talking about how everybody's got to have this. It's going to be so great. It's going to make you so wealthy in your community.
You have to convince your community how great these things. You can't fight it. You have to go with it.
You got to get it.
You're going to have all that protection, and we're giving you automatic protection. But you're going to make a tremendous amount of money. You're going to reduce taxes, and you're going to have something that if you don't have it, everybody else wants it. So these are the smartest people. Most of you in this room, we have a couple probably on the other side of things. They disagree, but I don't know how they can disagree.
If you don't know who this traitor is at this point in time, wake up, folks. You don't want the data centers? This is the guy who is bribing people to do it. You don't want the lockdown, the masks? This is the guy who is bribing people to do it. This is the guy who paid for ventilators, who bribed the hospitals to kill people with ventilators, to kill people with remdesivir. We're just focusing on Fauci now, right? Or we focus on Biden. Oh, he was the bad guy. No, this is the bad guy. He began his second regime by talking about how he wanted to do custom mRNA injections for people using AI. He's militarizing this stuff. He's going to overrule objections on zoning. He's going to use it for eminent domain. You name it. This guy is going to ram this thing down our throats. He's first going to try bribery. If that doesn't work, he's going to ram it down our throats. He is the person who is pushing this, just like he's the person who's pushing war, who's pushing global economic depression with the oil embargo, with the sanctions that he's done. And so this is in Texas, just outside of Austin. They had a family who had a large amount of land. Some of it they sold for homes, and some of it they donated to the city to do a park. Those people have passed on now, and the city has just decided that it wants to do exactly what Trump is saying. You got to make so much money out of this. They sold it for $10 million to a company that wants to build a data center. And all these people are saying, we never heard anything about this. They never said that this was going to be happening. And then when they go down to protest it, the city council just turns a deaf ear to them. And when they sue the courts for it, the court says, well, you don't have any standing. You don't have any standing? This is what it's like to have a home and the noise pollution that comes from these things 24/7. Listen to this, what it sounds like.
We've been covering the data center debate in Metro Detroit for nearly a year now. But there are still few local examples of what it's like when they're up and running. One of the most common areas of concern I hear about is the noise that they could emit. But one community in southwest Michigan has been experiencing the reality of a data center next door for a couple of years now. And they say the sound has changed their lives.
Imagine that 24/7.
People who've never experienced this for themselves.
It sounds like someone set up a vacuum, like in your living room, and the vacuum is just, that thing needs to be cleaned. Like it is, the filter is clogged up, so it's a high pitch whining, and they just left it on and walked out.
You've seen movies and stuff where they have somebody in a cell torture them with sound, and that's basically what it is.
Lindy Valenzuela and Marjorie and Billy Finn are neighbors who all live directly across the street from a data center in Dowagiac, Michigan. The data center is known by residents as Hyperscale Data. It is owned by Alliance Cloud Services, LLC, a company based in Las Vegas, Nevada. They tell me that for the past couple of years, it has been emitting a high-pitched sound, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
It's like
But
torture.
it wasn't always like this. Marjorie tells me the house has been in her family for nearly 100 years.
I love this house because it has so much feel of my past. All our friends are here, all our support systems here.
They explained to me that life on their dead-end street, Louise Avenue, was mostly quiet and peaceful, even though for decades there had always been an industrial building across the street behind a row of pine trees. They say in 2018, things began to change drastically. The trees came out, a loading dock went in, and around 2021, a cryptocurrency mining operation began. In 2024, they say the noise from the building began around the clock.
How would you characterize life on your street before the data center and after?
It's different as night and day to me. Even if it's cooler out, we can't open our windows like we used to. It's just amazing how much it's changed our life.
In March, Dowagiac city leaders adopted the first ever industrial noise ordinance for the city. It sets a daytime decibel limit of 65 and a nighttime limit of 55. According to the city manager, they fined Hyperscale Data for violating the ordinance. Hyperscale is challenging the city's readings and methodology. For months, Hyperscale Data has been touting plans for expansion, despite city leaders saying they were left in the dark and that no expansion permits had been submitted. Last week, at the invitation of Dowagiac's mayor, the CEO of Hyperscale Data, William Horn, spoke directly to city residents at a special council meeting. Horn explained that the company plans to invest $100 million to expand AI computing and advanced robotics at the facility and pivot away from cryptocurrency mining. He also said they would make multiple efforts to reduce sound levels. And for residents on Louise Avenue,
if they still aren't happy and feel that their home isn't enjoyable, then we'll buy their property from them.
Dozens of residents
eminent
spoke out
domain.
passionately at the meeting, none in support of Hyperscale.
Why didn't you consider the residents when the noise continues to get louder and louder and louder?
The bottom line here is that you are not your neighbors. Your business is sneaky, uncooperative with local ordinances.
I wanted to know more about what the science says when it comes to data center sound, so I reached.
Well, again, when we look at that, it's kind of interesting. There is a man bites dog story coming out of Nashville. They're looking at the data center that's going there, and they said that noise, that vibration is going to disrupt the animals. We care if it's zoo animals, but if they put you in a zoo, they don't care. Just like we're talking about the federal case out of somebody kicking a sea lion, but they don't care what they do with this. As a matter of fact, the courts say against this kind of trespass, you have no standing to sue. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Shout out to our favorite MD, Anthony Fauci.
So who paid for this garbage? Who paid for this psyop? This is the kind of stuff they were doing. Wasn't that a tell for a lot of people? It's time to make new memories once you get the vaccine, right? We have stolen your life. We'll give it back to you if you take the shot. And of course, it wasn't just this kind of propaganda. You got to ask yourself, who is funding this? Take a look at what Stephen Colbert did. We know who funded this. That's the wrong one. Let's see. I wanted to get the Colbert Vax, but remember he had the guys dressed up like chorus girls with their hairy legs, and they were wearing an outfit that looked like a hypodermic needle, and they were out there, Pfizer, Moderna, all that kind of garbage. And we had the dancing nurses. I'll never forget that. I mean, we had people going by, independent journalists, who said, the hospitals are completely empty. They're not letting people in because they want to reserve the beds for anybody that they can point to and say has COVID. So somebody could be really sick. They could be dying of cancer. We're not going to do anything to treat them. Instead, we're going to leave the beds open for people who we can diagnose as having respiratory illness and say that it's COVID, because then we get all this money from Trump to do that. We can put him on ventilators and remdesivir till we kill him. And he'll pay us a 20% bonus besides the finder's fee for finding somebody that can be that. So we had people going around saying it's empty. And yet you had all these videos up there, the dancing nurses. This stuff was choreographed, and they had a lot of time for all this stuff. And I don't think those people were even nurses. I think they were dancers out there. They had professional videographers out there doing aerial boom shots, doing dolly shots, doing drone shots, you name it. It was a highly structured psyop. And folks, that's my opinion about what's going on with Rand Paul and all this stuff with Fauci. We know that Fauci is a criminal. We know that he's part of the deep state. We know that he's been involved with the CIA for decades. He makes more than the president of the United States. None of that is talked about. What is also not talked about is the fact that Rand Paul's wife was used as a beard to buy stock in Gilead that was making remdesivir. And Rand Paul is a physician. He should have blown the whistle on this. This was all so contradictory with virology. He didn't do enough with this stuff. And now what they're doing is they're selling the idea that, well, it was all Fauci. And we don't have to have any real reform of the institutions. We don't have to worry about that. They're laying that up. They're putting the blame on him as a scapegoat so none of them go to jail, which they all should go to jail. And there's no criticism of Trump in any of this. It is a show trial, folks. It's just as phony as what they did with Benghazi and the rest of this stuff. But Rand Paul said, while children sat masked and isolated with a 0% chance of severe illness from COVID, Anthony Fauci was privately writing about Barbara Streisand's calls for vaccine advice and bragging about being a part of the Fauci Five for appearing on every Sunday show in 1 week. And it was about his fame, his celebrity that was in his diaries. But when you make it about that, you're missing the key issue here. Where are the laws coming from Rand Paul and people in Congress to stop this from ever being done again? Why don't we see that happening? Nothing is being done about that at all. As a matter of fact, they're ramping this up and making it worse. Right now, you've got the Second Circuit Court saying that the Amish have to take the shots. And this is the shots, the measles shots and things like that. That is an even bigger issue that Rand Paul's not talking about. Think of all the children that have died from SIDS. Think about all the children that now have autism, an epidemic of autism. That all goes back to Fauci. And when he gave the vaccine companies legal immunity to harm and to kill our children, nobody talks about that. This whole thing is so fraudulent, it makes me want to throw up. I am so sick and tired of seeing this used for partisan purposes by Republicans and by quote-unquote conservative influencers who aren't trying to conserve anything. So nobody's asking about his salary, remdesivir connections, none of this stuff. They're very narrowly focusing on his desire to be a celebrity, and they don't even talk about his compensation and all this. Certainly not talking about the royalties that he gets. A megalomaniacal egomaniac milking COVID for everything that it's worth, says one person. Well, all that stuff is true, but they don't mention Trump at all in any of this. Is Trump a megalomaniacal egomaniac, milking us and the government and his office for everything that it's worth? Yes, he is. And he was back in 2020 as well as today. So these internal emails that he has in his diary, he's bragging about his awards, his nominations, his ethics clearances, his disposition of prize money. Does he kind of sound like Trump? Did anybody give Fauci a peace prize? No, they didn't. But Trump gave him a prize. He gave him a commendation. I refer to it as a medal. And we got people who say, hey, he didn't give him a medal. He gave him a commendation. Okay, so what difference does it make, right? I don't care if he gave him something that's a ribbon, a special ribbon. I don't care if he put a gold star on the little elf's forehead. I don't care what he did. He commended him for that. He gave him an award for that, and he really lived for that. And so, again, this is really about habits becoming routine, deciding what the public needs to believe, and then flooding the zone with that. Even to the point of going from saying masks aren't required to then saying masks are required to saying that you got to go to double masking. And it was kind of interesting. This particular article on Zero Hedge, they went there and they did a word search. And I like to do that when I get a large document like this. This is 1,141 pages. So they said, never once were these terms used. Peer review, meta-analysis, risk, benefit, mental health, none of that was mentioned at all. Not a single mention. N95 was mentioned once. Cost benefit was mentioned once. Twice they had cloth mask in his diaries. Twice he talked about school closure, and twice he talked about natural immunity. Only twice. But he talked 80 times about awards, 49 times about being a hero, 36 times about Instagram, 23 times the term bobblehead was used. I don't know how he uses that. And selfie 19 times. But listen to this. Entries that were headed by the word press. 641. This guy was a publicity hound. Yeah, he was absolutely a narcissist. Cut from the same cloth as Donald Trump. So Fauci didn't believe virology. Why should I believe any of this? He didn't believe in natural immunity. He didn't believe in training the immune system with even a disease. So why should I believe any of that? You shouldn't. And you should dismiss all of this hand-wringing about gain-of-function stuff and furrin cleavage and all the rest of this nonsense. It is absolute nonsense, folks. If they won't go back and look at how this all began in 2001, 2 months before 9/11, and the 20 years that they practiced that, if they're going to ignore that, forget about anything that turned up in 2021. And, of course, that's a document that's going to have everybody looking, oh, look, what he's talking about, what they're doing there with this. That was there, I believe, as a bit of bait for these people. What they want is exactly what these people are reporting. Oh, yeah, somebody, we don't know who, and we can't take any responsibility. We're not going to hold anybody responsible. But somebody out there did something with the gain-of-function stuff at the Wuhan lab or funded it. And, of course, we can't punish anybody, and we can't make any changes. Are they talking about, is Rand Paul talking about stopping gain-of-function? No. This is just personalizing it, making Fauci a scapegoat. He's not talking about even getting rid of, and I think they should get rid of gain-of-function. It's horrific what they're doing. David Leiden of Center for Medical Progress, he's the one that found the connection between a lot of these babies that were aborted for experimentation. They take the spare parts and they send them to the University of Pittsburgh. And in one of these particular cases, they were taking entire scalps from babies and putting them on rats to see if the hair would continue to grow. This is kind of monstrous stuff that they're doing. Is any of that stuff going to stop? No, they're not talking about that. Instead, it's like, well, look at this. Fauci is boasting about how he locked us all down and did this and did that. They're not talking about doing anything to change anything. It's very much like 9/11. As Tony Rook in the UK pointed out, he said, so if this were true, why haven't we had any changes to the building codes, right? If a building can fall down like that, why not change the building code? Why not change the way the firefighters operate? There have been no changes to any of that. They don't believe any of that. If they believed the gain-of-function stuff, they would make some changes to gain-of-function stuff. If they believed it was a real pandemic and that it was created by gain-of-function, they would make those changes. They would say, we don't want to have that happening, but they're not doing it, which tells you that they don't believe it any more than I don't believe it. Well, how should I phrase that? I don't believe it, and they don't believe it. Let's just put it that way, okay? It's absolute total baloney. Total Fauci baloney is what this really is. And of course, he's talking about how he's taking credit for state lockdowns, just like we saw one of the people that got promoted in the Biden administration to the CDC. She said, yeah, I would call these other state health directors. She was in North Carolina. Are you going to lock down your people? Oh, okay, well, I'll do it too. This is like a high school student council meeting. You know, this is nothing other than, well, so-and-so said this about me. That's what you see throughout the diary. So-and-so said this, and I called them up, and we had a full court press, and we got them to agree to do this and so forth. It was all political. It was all psychological. And now it is all tribalism. It's all about the Republicans going after Fauci. When you look at the number of times that this has been reported, it's been reported only once on MSNBC, and that was just in passing. But when you look at what has happened with Fox News, they're talking about it quite a bit. It's just become a partisan football when they post this through. Again, when we look at the baby scalps put onto rats, it's absolutely amazing. Nobody cares about that. You remember the outrage, and it was appropriate to have the outrage over the torture of puppies as they were experimenting on them. But nobody cares if you take the scalps of babies and put them on rats. And as David DeLayden pointed out, he said, well, what does that tell us about the way these children were aborted? He said it's an indication that there was either a partial birth abortion or the infants were delivered alive and whole and then murdered. Kermit Gosnell. And that's why I say, you know, when we look at what is happening with Fauci, Ron DeSantis said he's almost a divine figure to the left. And that is the way that they celebrate him. You have the media just praised him from one side to the other, whether it is left or right. They were constantly deferring to him and essentially worshiping him. Fox News has mentioned him 343 times since Monday. CNN and MS Now have combined mentioned him 11 times. And so it's 11 times over two networks versus 343 on Fox News. It is now a partisan football. They're not going to do anything about Fauci. And when it was brought up on, this is on, let's see, whose program is this? CNN. One person's mentioned Fauci's name briefly and was completely shut down by the host, who said, we're not going to pivot to Anthony Fauci's diaries. They know what it is. They just choose not to report it. And the Senate and the House know what this is, and they refuse to punish it. And they refuse to make the changes in the institutions to make sure this doesn't happen again. That's the reality of what's happening. Well, Gerald is ready to join us, and I want to go to Gerald, and we want to talk about the guy that he admires so much, Lindsey Graham. We'll have Gerald Celente give us a eulogy on Lindsey Graham. I think it'll be interesting. But I want to thank Doug Lugg. Thank you so much. Appreciate the tip. And also DG8. Thank you again. He said, David Trump owns a lot of stock in Axion. Yeah. But he cares about our privacy. Yeah, no, he doesn't. As a matter of fact, he's making money off of enacting this police surveillance state, no doubt about it. He's made more money in his 1 year than he did in his previous nearly 60 years of business. That should tell you everything about this crook, Donald Trump. We'll be right back.
making sense common again. You're listening to The David Knight Show.
All right, joining us now is Gerald Celente of TrendsJournal.com. And Gerald has always been ahead of the curve in terms of trends. He saw these wars coming a long time ago, and unfortunately, as he points out, he reports on what he sees happening as trends, not what he would like to have happen. Gerald has worked tirelessly for the purpose of peace, and just as tirelessly as Lindsey Graham worked for war. Peace doesn't pay, though, like war does for these guys. And so we had a funeral for Lindsey Graham yesterday, and I thought it was kind of interesting to see all the people who were eulogizing him, Gerald. It was truly disgusting to see all these Christians lining up, and it was truly disgusting to see what Sean Hannity was saying. Sean Hannity was even more disgusting than he usually is. But thank you for joining us. Again, trendsjournal.com, and you can save 10% off with the code NIGHT. And when you do that, it is, what is it? It's like a week's worth. It's less than 1 day of the Wall Street Journal, is that correct? Or New York Times, I should say?
It's half the day of a Wall. It's $2.50 a week.
Wow.
And you see the magazine. It's over 200 pages,
Mm-hmm.
around 200. Mm-hmm. And you read what you want, from high-tech science to AI to geopolitics, economics, on and on.
And it's a great format. I love it because it's like a magazine online. I mean, it's even got pages that you flip through.
Or you can listen to it. It's in different languages, and you can print it out. And I got to tell you, I'm heartbroken. I've never worked harder in my life. And to see the decline of humanity in front of our eyes. You talk about Lindsey Graham and all these so-called Christians. What Christ do you believe in?
No. They made up their own
you mean
Christ.
The Prince of Peace?
Yeah.
The Prince of Peace, is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
And you're celebrating an arrogant slime ball warmonger?
That's right.
They're a bunch of hypocrites.
Yep.
What Christ are you talking about?
Even their political issues, they say that you got the Family Research Center, Tony Perkins is there eulogizing Lindsey Graham. And it's like, family? Are you talking about family? What about the families that he blew up? What about the families that are being run out of their homes at gunpoint while they bulldoze their homes and steal them at that point? You don't care about any of that stuff. You got Susan B. Anthony, the pro-life organization. How pro-life is the Gaza genocide? How pro-life are these wars, one after the other? Even Donald Trump in his eulogy said he never saw a war he didn't like. Now, Sean Hannity.
A fat boy, 5-time draft dodger.
Yeah.
Hasn't been a war I didn't like, but I won't go fighting them. Anybody that supports war, put on your costume, go over there and fight us, shut your mouth. And talking about the lack of caring when they love the warmongers, this is from the Times of Israel yesterday. Defense Minister Israel Katz, cats in the bag, says Israel has, you ready? Has completely destroyed 24 historic villages in southern Lebanon. Quote, 24 Lebanese villages that were hundreds of years old with Shiite residents who acted as enemies of Israel.
Yeah.
And threatened our borders and our residents. We destroyed all the buildings, not one house at a time. The entirety of all the villages, their demolition has been completed. You ready? We're talking about 15,000 to 20,000 homes.
This is horrible.
All 24 of these villages have been destroyed.
And they brag about it. It. Yeah. And it's genocide. That is absolutely genocide.
And not only they brag about it, they steal our money to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
So everybody, shut your mouth, do what you're told, go to work. We're stealing your money, and we're going to give it to Israel to keep slaughtering people, stealing land, and genocide. So shut up.
That's right.
Be a good little boy and girl, and don't raise your voice You're still in kindergarten. You obey your president and the slimeball politicians that you vote for.
Put your mask on your face because Fauci says so.
Yep. Yeah.
And you can only walk in one direction through the grocery store and all the rest of this nonsense.
This was my mask.
There you go.
Yeah. No, little Lindsey Graham, may he rot in hell.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you're talking about the way they go through and they destroy entire villages. That was the very essence of the term genocide. That's what the Turks did to the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. They're still doing it and recently did it. But it was a Jewish guy who coined the term genocide, and he did it talking about what the Turks are doing to the Armenians. And that is exactly what Israel is doing and boasting about doing, even in Lebanon, not just in Gaza, but in Lebanon. Yeah. And, one of the things is any student of the Bible knows that olive trees were a big part of life there. And, of course, the olive trees have been there for millennia. At the time of Christ, he went to the Mount of Olives. Does that ring a bell with anybody? But these guys, 60%, 2/3, I should say, of the Israelis have an allergy to the pollen of the olive tree. And so they want to get rid of these things because they represent the income of these families who have been farming this for millennia. And so they've got to rip the olive trees out so they don't have any way to support themselves, but they also don't like the pollen. But that is a key indicator that they're not from that area. Only 1% of the globe is allergic to olive tree pollen, but it's 2/3 of these people who are cosplaying as Israelis. And it's just ridiculous when you look at what they're doing, and it's so incredibly evil. When Sean Hannity was talking about Lindsey Graham, I couldn't believe it when I saw this. He said his greatest gift in life, from my perspective, was that Lindsey had moral clarity. He understood right from wrong and good from evil. That didn't keep him from doing evil. It didn't make him do right. And I would say that since I believe in God, I believe in a judgment. I think that Lindsey Graham finally has some moral clarity at this point. I don't know.
Again, it's a joke.
Yeah,
and again,
it is.
In a year, nobody will ever remember Lindsey Graham again, who he was, what he was, all gone, all forgotten. When you're gone, you're dead. You're dead, you're over. It's...
well, his wars will live on, right? The evil that men do lives beyond them.
Did I tell you this story about Lindsey Graham when I was on Fox? I used to be on Fox a lot.
Yeah, I think you did. That they dumped you so they could have him come on.
Yeah.
Was that it?
Because I came out against we're talking about Obama invading Libya.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they had a top CIA guy on. And I started going after the guy. I said, Libya is the richest country in Africa. People have more rights and benefits than most of the world.
Mm-hmm.
They're very rich in oil. I said, you think they're going after that? I said, no, we have no right doing this. No, we have to take a break. We have Senator Lindsey Graham coming on. And that's when they used to send a satellite truck up here to Kingston.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they took me off the air for that little slob.
Well, probably because of what you were saying, they probably had Lindsey Graham on speed dial. We need your help right away. We got to push back. Somebody's talking about peace. We can't have that. Well, I'm your guy. He's going to come on right away, no matter what he's doing. He'll drop it to push war.
And that was the end. That was about when they stopped having me on after that.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, the other thing that Sean Hannity said, which I thought was pretty amazing, let me play this for you. I think you can hear this clip. This is Sean Hannity imagining that Lindsey Graham is enjoying a heavenly version of Mar-a-Lago.
Where ye may be also. Lindsey, Mr. President, I would argue in my mind, probably has a heavenly version of Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, you think?
It may even be
what a jerk.
He may have a little more gold in the Oval Office in his mansion in heaven. And I wouldn't be surprised if he added one big, beautiful ballroom and an arch somewhere on the property. Because
how about a golden statue of himself?
Duplicate his dearest friend in life, you, Mr. President.
Wow. Isn't that disgusting? Can that guy get any more disgusting than that?
Yeah. And look how much that jerk, slobby, craphead Hannity's worth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like $150 million or something.
Yeah.
Ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, he's
what they
he's
pay
nothing
these
other than an
clowns for.
influencer. Yeah, he's an
A
influencer.
little slobby jerk.
Yeah. If we're going to talk about heaven, you might want to mention what Jesus said, blessed be the peacemakers, right?
No, how dare you say that? How dare you say that?
He didn't say,
Jesus
blessed
never
are
said
those
that.
who sell wars. He didn't say that. That's really what
No.
Lindsey Graham's entire life was about. And that's what they were honoring. And it was really a disgusting display. And I thought about that. Somebody mentioned the fact that they didn't do it in contrast with Lindsey Graham's funeral. But, there was just a funeral of the Ayatollah in Iran. And as one person had pointed out about that, maybe that was the largest funeral ever in history. They had millions of people in the streets. What you get with Lindsey Graham is you get this cabal of liars, murderers, and people who are stealing. They're there to eulogize him one after the other. And, it's kind of interesting. He had this documentary that he had a guy following him around, and the guy is going to release a documentary. He's going to call the documentary Lindsey's Game. And it really was a game for Lindsey. But, people were dying in this game. It was a game of death. It's like, Travis, what was that dystopian thing? Hunger Games or something, right? It's that type of thing where, Roman Coliseum games, that's the kind of games that he enjoyed. Bringing unparalleled joy and bringing destruction to foreign people. That was really the full amount of his life. And he's got this guy following around the documentary. And he got some amazing stuff. It truly is crazy to see Lindsey Graham. I almost cried. He cried tears of joy as they're blowing up schools with hundreds of young girls in it and doing it in a double tap way. Truly amazing. When you look at what Scott Ritter said about that, he said, I know how this thing operates. And I know that they have a drone that it was loitering up there, and that's exactly what they did. Saw the whole thing, and then called in a second strike. So anybody that survived from the initial explosion, anybody that survived from the initial blast would be taken out in a holocaust of flame. It truly is incredible. Well, before we continue, Gerald, we got to take a quick break here at the bottom of the hour, and we're going to be right back. Stay with us. Make this very brief.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Gerald Celente of Trends Journal. And again, you can save 10% on a subscription to Trends Journal. Very economical, especially with the 10% off. And you can find that at trendsjournal.com. You can see what it looks like. A very impressive weekly publication, in depth on real issues, no fluff that he has there. But while we're talking about fluff, let's take a look at Lindsey Graham. And I played this clip yesterday. I want to get your reaction to this. This is Lindsey Graham, nearly brought to tears of joy, talking about how good Trump is at blowing stuff up.
Virtually everything they have has been knocked out now.
Virtually everything. It's all gone.
Going way down.
This is right away.
Amazingly, they're hitting countries that
Of course, now we don't know that's true.
What we've done here. I know. I almost cried. Yeah. I mean, like, how long have we been pushing this?
30 years.
Pushing this for years, right? Right. It's here. I talked to Trump this morning. Oh, he's jacked. Yeah. It's the best thing I've ever done. He loves blowing stuff up. So, there are a lot of people inside didn't want to do it. So I've had my challenges. But President Trump, when he gets into the zone, he listens, he asks good questions, no tweeting. He has done he hadn't tweeted much at all, no drama.
Yeah, what about that? No drama. Boy, we've had a lot of tweeting and drama ever since he's pronounced that he's won this war maybe 30 times. He's told us how he's destroyed all their military equipment, how he's going to wipe out their civilization. If that isn't a signed confession of a war crime, I don't know what is, but it just disgusts me to see what is being done with our government and done in our name with our money.
Again, it's go to it. If anybody wants to know more about the Trends Journal, go to YouTube and look at the comments of the people that subscribe to it.
Mm-hmm.
We're giving people that you're not getting anywhere else.
That's right.
And here, this is from the economic update yesterday. We talked about the .com bust.
Mm-hmm.
And this is starting to happen, particularly in Asia. The Asian markets are going down. The Kospi, the South Korean market, it's down some 34% this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's up still it was up over 70%, but now it's down into bear territory. They're selling out of the semiconductors and high-tech stuff. It's way overvalued. So we begin by talking about that and how there's the .com bust. And then we go into the next breakout point, phony pump up. As we have detailed by his words and deeds, remember, this is yesterday. U.S. President Donald Trump will continue to do all he can to keep propping up the U.S. equity markets and bring oil prices down since he and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu launched the illegal war on 28 February. Now, you mentioned that they're not from the Middle East, these people.
Mm-hmm.
They're Eastern Europeans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And every president or prime minister of Italy has been Israel has been an Eastern European. They're not Semites. Most of them are Ashkenazis
mm-hmm.
from Eastern Europe. Ashkenazi. You got it? Ashkenazis.
And typically from Ukraine. Typically, many of these people are from Ukraine or parts of Russia.
Again, as we note by his words and deeds, it's not BS. The bull is dead. What Trump spews out is Trump, SHI. It's not BS anymore. Again, we note the facts and data as to the many sides of his mouth Trump speaks from as the art of the deal presidential reality show champion. Again, by the facts. In a phone call with the New York Times the day after the war began, so it was March 1st, they reported that President Trump said that the U.S. military intends to sustain its assault on Iran, you ready? For, quote, 4 or 5 weeks. If necessary, insisting, quote, it won't be difficult for Israel and the United States to intensify the battle. Okay, 4 or 5 weeks? Welcome to 5 months, 1 day.
Yeah.
Where the hell is the outrage? Hey, Trump, you said 4 or 5 weeks, all right? Yeah. It's 5 months now. Oh, and what's the real number it's costing us? According to some of the data, $120 billion for this war.
Yeah.
Hardly any reporting about or showing any of the pictures of how Iran is destroying military bases throughout the Gulf region in the Middle East.
That's right. They don't want to see that. And they have adjusted 3 times over the weekend the casualty figures of American soldiers at the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And then divided it between 2 supposedly different wars, these 2 operations. Oh, they're completely separate. What a bunch of lies. And of course, they've been told from the very beginning this is not going to be a quagmire. We had people like Ben Shapiro and others at the Daily Wire like Dave Rubin. Stop talking about it being a quagmire. There's no way it's going to be a fast victory and all the rest of the stuff. What's happening now? You just had the UN ambassador, the U.S.'s ambassador to the UN, Waltz, who said on the Sunday show, he said, no, this isn't going to end until at the earliest 2027 sometime. And so we're talking about
not going to end at all.
No, it's going to just be this ongoing quagmire.
Yep. And then he does it to rig the markets because let's go back to last week.
Mm-hmm.
The United States attacked for 13 days. Brent crude broke over $100 a barrel. Then what happened after? Again, he keeps doing this over and over again. After the markets closed on Friday, hey, we got a ceasefire deal coming up, all right?
Mm-hmm.
President Trump said Monday, he told reporters that an Iran deal was in the making because, you ready? They want to meet, and we are meeting. We'll see what happens. There's a chance we can make a deal. Without it's claiming that Iran wanted a deal because, quote, without what we did, they wouldn't even be talking to us. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Trump told Axios News on Monday, we are in very deep talks with Iran. And what happened? Brent crude on Friday was $100. It went down to 83, close to 83.91 yesterday.
Yeah,
But
he's
now-
an expert on manipulation, isn't he?
Yep. And again, none of this reporting in the Western media. As he's lying about the ceasefire, again, we go to Al Jazeera, we go to Tehran Times, we go to IRNA, we go to ISNA, we go to Press TV, Tasman, we go to the Iranian sites, the Arab sites. And this is from Al Jazeera. Kazem, I can't pronounce his last name, Gharibadi, Karabadi, said, this is Iran's deputy foreign minister, said, quote, there are no plans to negotiate with the U.S.
Yeah.
As Trump is saying they're negotiating, this guy said, we're not negotiating with them.
Isn't it amazing? We got the Ayatollahs are telling us the truth. And the president just lies and gets caught in the lies.
Lie after lie.
Even as this stuff is happening, they don't have any missiles, and then you see the news feed as they are, hitting the American military bases with it at the same time. Yeah, this is the latest thing that I just saw the last couple of days, Gerald. There was an article that came out of Haaretz, and they said there's no interest in getting the Israeli government drawn into the U.S.-Iran conflict. Imagine that. Look at how they have turned this thing upside down. We know from the very beginning, they were the ones who drew us in. You had Lindsey Graham bragging about the fact, he comes in and he strikes while the iron is hot, while Trump is all puffed up with pride about the illegal criminal war of aggression they did against Venezuela, and they're still killing people illegally and criminally by blowing up boats out there. Has had absolutely zero effect on drug interdiction, of course. But he was all pumped up with pride, so they struck while that iron was hot. And again, pushing this stuff, and now they drew us into it. Rubio said that. Now the Israeli press is saying, well, we don't want to get Israel drawn into this U.S.-Iran war. And you got the Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, says, quote, Israel has no interest in joining the limited confrontation between Iran and the U.S. The current situation is the best possible one for us. You better believe it is. They created that situation. Now they pull back like they don't know how this happened, right? Passive-aggressive stuff. Isn't it amazing how they lie?
Total BS, because here's the deal.
Yeah.
What wasn't Netanyahu in the United States? Just came here?
Yeah, for Lindsey's funeral, yeah.
Yeah. Now, to talk with Trump.
Yeah, that's
They're
right.
totally involved in this war.
That's right.
There's not going to be a ceasefire because one of the demands from Iran is that Israel has to pull out of Lebanon, stop stealing land in Gaza and the West Bank. That's just some of it. And the other ones that you mentioned earlier, they want their money back that the Americans stole from them, the billions.
That's right.
They're not going to do it. And Iran is also demanding that America pay for the damage it's caused in bombing the place. There's not going to be a ceasefire. Israel is totally involved in this war. And here you mentioned about Rubio. Because here, this is March 3rd. Trump was asked about Rubio saying the U.S. attacked Iran because Israel would have attacked first, prompting Iran to strike U.S. targets in the region, Trump said. He said, no, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first.
Yeah.
They were going to attack. I felt strongly about that, and based on the way the negotiations were going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand, but Israel was ready, and we are ready. And we've had a very, very powerful impact. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Because virtually everything they have has been knocked out.
Yeah, every bit
That
of
was
that.
March 3rd.
Every bit of that was a lie, wasn't it?
And again, it was my opinion they were going to attack us first, so I attacked them. Your opinion? And the cover of our Trends magazine was March 10th was shove your opinion up your you-know-what. Show us the facts.
If look could
And
kill,
again-
it would have been us instead of them, right?
And you only attack the attacker.
That's right. That's the only time that it is justified in a war, because
Again,
they should not be glorying in this war. They should not, even if they have to do it to defend innocent life, even if they have to do it to defend against aggression, it shouldn't be something that they take joy in, like Lindsey Graham does, like Pete Hegseth does. It's disgusting to see that happening.
No.
Well, retired Colonel Douglas McGregor said, we hear all these TV generals saying we got to finish the job. And of course, you had, I don't know if you know this guy. He's out of New York. His name is Sid Rosenberg, but they gave him some time on Fox News. Yeah, he's disgusting and stupid. We got to finish the job. I don't care how many of you Americans die. You got to go die for Israel type of thing. And as many people pointed out, and as Douglas McGregor has pointed out, he said, this is not anything at all like Iraq. Iraq was like the type of place where they test missiles, a flat bed of sand and all the rest of the stuff. Half of this country is mountainous, and they got a population that is 5 times the number. Douglas McGregor is saying we can't equip millions of soldiers to fight thousands of miles away from home. A mass mobilization unseen since World War II, when America was the world's leading industrial superpower. And he points out, I thought this was interesting, Gerald. He said one of the guys that's really selling this idea on TV, one of the actual, you could sarcastically call Sid Rosenberg a TV general, but this is a guy who's actually a retired general, and he's pushing the idea of boots on the ground, American boots on the ground. This is a retired 4-star general, Frank McKenzie. And as Douglas McGregor says, he seems to think that he has the answer. Ground forces, he said. Remember, McKenzie's withdrawal preceded the rapid collapse of U.S. trained and equipped Afghan forces and an Islamic State suicide bombing, which killed 13 U.S. Marines. He was the guy that was in charge of this fire drill evacuation out of Afghanistan. And so now he's saying we got to put ground troops in and take Karg Island. That's the same general.
Again, I mentioned this, one of my books, Trend Tracking.
Mm-hmm.
And far better than Megatrends, Time Magazine, 1989. So how I became a trend forecaster and a political atheist when the Iran conflict broke out. And he taught us to hate Iran. Anyway, since that time, I've been saying there's no way remember this is 1989, I've been saying it since then. There's no way the United States could defeat Iran. These are the Persians.
Mm-hmm.
They've been around a long time, and they're very advanced scientifically, technologically, and militarily.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as McGregor pointed out, the other facts as well. They put boots on the ground, they'll be dead in seconds, in minutes.
Yeah.
They'll be obliterated in minutes.
He said if they even get to the island, then what do they do? What's the purpose of this? And I don't think there is any purpose. I think they just want to keep this war going.
I just told you the purpose.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to attack us, so I attacked them.
Mm-hmm.
That's Trump's words. That's why he said we got in the war. I just read it.
That's right.
A totally illegal war.
That's right. Well, when you look at this, when you look at the economic stuff that's on the horizon today, the Federal Reserve is going to announce what they're going to do with interest rates. And as everybody hangs on that, to me, Gerald, it looks exactly like how Wall Street hangs on Trump's phony pronouncements about progress and victory in this war. It is absolutely phony. You got Kevin Warsh has decided one of the first things he's going to do is change the way that he calculates inflation. And they lie to us about everything. But the bigger issue is I see all this, all of the markets being moved by interest rates. And I see one article after the other. They're not forget about oil and forget about the war. Everybody's looking to see what the Federal Reserve is going to do about interest rates, if it's going to go up a quarter or down a quarter or whatever. And that's what's affecting the price of gold. It truly is insane how these people, how it's like a fad. It's like a collective madness, the momentum chasers that are out there in the marketplace. And the reality still remains there. All the stuff about everybody fleeing the petrodollar still is there. As a matter of fact, one clip I played this week, the guy was saying, the Strait of Hormuz is really an existential issue for the American empire, because that is showing that we cannot provide the security the petrodollar was based on. And of course, Saudi has moved away to China now in terms of influence. The petrodollar is going away, and the U.S. dollar is going away as the world's reserve currency, because people there was this implied agreement that they were going to have the U.S. be the global police force, and they would participate in this fraud of the fiat currency, and everybody's seeing that isn't going to happen anymore.
Again, you're talking about, why gold prices are going down. You got the U.S., the U.S. 30-year U.S. Treasury yield, it's above 5%. So the three reasons they're going down. Number one, you saw Russia was at war. They sold over 44 tons of gold. Turkey's selling gold. Mexico's selling gold, one after another, because this Iran war and the other wars are costing big money, and their currencies are going down as the dollar's going up. Number two, covering losses in the equity markets. They're selling out of gold to cover their losses. But the other one, we're looking at, the higher the yields go, the higher long-term rates go, and like mortgages and loans. So that's going to bring down the market. And this is important, that this is the longest stretch that the Treasury's been at 5% since, when?
When?
2007.
Ah, okay.
November, right before the panic of 08.
Well, that's a harbinger, isn't it?
And by the way, we took out the domain name in November 2007, panic of 08. That's where we're at. So this is totally artificially propped up the markets. They're way overvalued. And again, by the way, this just came out from Haaretz. You mentioned that news site before, just before I went on the air. I don't want to say the word, but can you see that?
Let's see. Trump will, he'll beat the effing crap out of Iran after it fired at a U.S. base. Yeah, we'll see.
All right. How many times
Tough guy.
has he said this crap? How many times? Oh, people don't like my language. Yeah. But it's okay for Trump to say that we're going to beat the effing SHI, out of Iran.
That's right. Yeah.
Where is the outrage? Could you imagine if Hitler and Mussolini said these things?
Yeah.
We'd be reading about it in our history books.
Well, the difference.
We'd be reading about if Hitler said, we're going to beat the FNS out of France. We'd be reading that in our history books.
The difference is that Hitler and Mussolini didn't grow up in WWE wrestling.
Yeah, I forgot.
That's what this is really about. Yeah.
It is March 26th. Remember when I gave Iran 10 days to make a deal or open up the Strait of Hormuz? Time's running out. 48 hours before all hell will rain down on them. April 4th.
Yeah, he's a tough guy, isn't he?
One after another, one lie after another. Trump says war in Iran moving substantially ahead of schedule. That was on day after the war, 2 days after, March 2nd. Yep.
Well, when you were talking about interest rates,
after another.
We're talking about interest rates and talking about the stock market bubble that he's helped to push along with all this stuff. It's not just the stock prices that are in a bubble. There's also a massive AI debt bubble. You look at the massive amount of capital expenditures these people put in, and look at what NVIDIA is doing. I mean, there's one deal after the other. Well, this one we got $250 billion over here. We got $350 billion over here. They're throwing money around like crazy. And part of this is a fraud in terms of this circular investing. They give these companies money, and the companies turn around and use that money to buy the NVIDIA GPUs from them. And, then they mark that up as sale for this stuff. And so that everybody knows that that's a fraud, but they just keep going with it as if it's something that they pretend that it's real. It's the craziest marketplace you've ever seen, I think. This is what this reminds me of, Gerald, is that movie, The Big Short. I never read the book, but you got a couple of guys that caught on to what was happening, and they saw the fraud that was there, and they start blowing the whistle to these various rating agencies and insurance agencies and so forth, and they all know, and they just keep this going. And the guys are like, how in the world can we be this dishonest with the stuff and just keep it going and nobody cares? That's where we are.
Yeah. We're on the same page. This is in your economic update in the Trends Journal. It went out last night. Again, it should be noted that high-tech equity spike markets were financed by a record amount of debt.
Mm-hmm.
Reuters reported that, quote, margin debt, the amount investors borrow to invest, hit a record $1.5 trillion in June, according to the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, leaving investors' net balance with their brokers in a $1 trillion deficit for the first time. And that, quote, investors who owe more than they have in cash are far more likely to sell into declines in stocks than buy them.
Wow.
So it's deep in debt, just as you said. We're talking $1.5 trillion in gambling.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, we now have as president a guy who bankrupted 6 casinos. He's probably going to bankrupt the biggest casino ever, Wall Street, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, but don't worry about it, because in your presidential reality show section, we have fascism. Trump's super PAC pulls in more than $400 million in non-presidential elections. Trump sees wealth boom in second term. One after another. Yep.
Yeah, the guy, his last name is Sun or whatever. He was a Chinese, Asian guy, and he made a lot of money off of crypto. He was the guy who spent $5 million for that quote-unquote piece of art, which was a banana taped to a wall with a piece of duct tape. Remember that? So ostentatious and, not serious about any of the money that is out there. The SEC came after him. And he made some major structural investments at the beginning of Trump's World Liberty Financial thing that he's got going on, that grift that's made so much money for his family. And so this guy made some big investments as that was taking off, helped them to get off the ground. And then, lo and behold, he's one of the first things that Trump does is he pardons this guy and gets the SEC off his back. He has now turned, and he is talking about Trump and his fraud, his crypto fraud, which is kind of interesting because I think what's going to happen is I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be turning as soon as they sense that he has had, things are blowing back on him. You're going to have a lot of people turning on him. I mean, I've never seen a bigger cheerleader for Trump than Alex Jones, and he is now out there calling for his impeachment, which, he never, privately, he didn't agree with Trump, but publicly, he couldn't be a bigger cheerleader for Trump. And I think it's going to go this way with a lot of people. A lot of people who have been shills and influencers for him are then going to turn on him. And I think that's probably going to happen around the midterms. I hope it does.
Again, that's why I think Alex Jones took me off, because I was opposed to Trump.
That's right. That's right.
And
took me off because I opposed the January the 6th fraud. Yeah. Yeah. Are you still there? We've got, do we lose you, Gerald? Are you still there?
Seems to have frozen.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll just finish up with this and say, we look at gold as one person finished their article here that said, gold is not looking for a larger role in the current system, but the current system may be assigning it one because the financial systems are based on confidence. And everybody has lost confidence in these crooked, fraudulent systems that we have. Everybody knows it's a fraud, and everybody's going along with it. Just like The Big Short, this is going to blow up big time. So make sure that you've got some insurance. And if you want to get insurance, you can't do anything better than to get some physical gold and silver that you know where it is, that you don't have to depend on somebody else. You don't have a counterparty risk, and you don't have somebody else who has possession of it. And you can do that by going to davidknight.gold. That'll take you to Tony Arterburn at Wise Wolf. You can gradually start to accumulate. You can dollar cost average with a monthly savings program that Tony will help you to set up, or you can make lump sum purchases as you wish. But again, go to davidknight.gold. And I want to thank, before we go off the air here, I want to thank Radisbro. Thank you very much for the tip. He said, these situations always remind me of the conspiracy that the elites have the real history and knowledge while they feed the animals artificial slop.
We have Gerald back now.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. We got Gerald. Thank you for, sorry we lost contact with you somehow, Gerald. But
that's right.
Go ahead, I'll give you the last word. We've got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, watch out for the markets. The equity markets, they're in serious danger. Again, this is global. And I'm very concerned that this war is going to go nuclear. Israel
look what he's doing with Saudi Arabia, right? He's proliferating it with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. And Trump is going to say that they were going to attack us or something. We had to go nuclear against Iran. And Israel has what they call the Samson option, SAMSON. They say if they're losing, they're going nuclear. Again, Netanyahu coming to the United States wasn't about Lindsey Graham. It was Trump to come up with the next deal on the war.
Yeah.
This war is not going to end. It's continuing. You're seeing the markets going down again today. Again, as I say, when all else fails, they take us to war. The markets are failing. The economy's failing. Trump's popularity rating. Here, the YouGov poll, CBS, only 35% of Americans approve of Trump's handling the economy. 65% disapprove. 71 disapprove of his handling inflation. On and on and on.
And they really don't care. They don't care whether we approve of Trump. They're going to rig the elections, just like they don't care if we approve of the flock cameras. They're going to continue equipping the police surveillance state. It doesn't matter what issue you look at. These people are going against the vast majority of the population. You might have only 20% of the people who are with them, 80% of the people who oppose them, and yet what do? They go against the 80%. It is the most high-handed kind of tyranny I've ever seen in my life. These guys don't even pretend to do what the people want.
Surveillance state, more than 117,000 automated license plate readers are across the U.S. That's one of the articles in the Trends Journal talking about the surveillance state, and it's just begun.
That's right.
It has just begun.
That's right. Yeah, it is horrific when we look at this. People are I played a clip earlier in the program, Gerald, of what it sounded like to be close to one of these things, this high-pitched, loud scream 24/7, drive people insane, and yet the reality is that the surveillance state these people are putting in place is far worse than anything that you're going to experience. As bad as those things are, it's going to be even worse than that. Thank you so much for joining us again, folks. You can go to trendsjournal.com, save 10% off with the code NIGHT. And I want to also thank G-Talent60. Thank you for the tip. It says, go, Gerald, go. And thank you, Do Not Obey. I appreciate the tip on Rumble. Thank you so much. An IRS machine gun. Thank you so much. Said he waited all week for this interview. Thank you for joining us, folks. Have a good day. The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.